In the final days of World War II, as Nazi Germany collapsed from within, a battle took place that should have been impossible. It was a moment when sworn enemies, American soldiers and German troops, stood shoulder to shoulder, not against each other, but against a common enemy. This was not a myth or legend, it was real, and it happened at a small medieval castle in the Austrian Alps. This was the Battle of Castle Itter. By May 1945, Europe was in chaos. Adolf Hitler was dead, Berlin had fallen, Nazi command structures were crumbling, German units were surrendering across the continent. Yet despite the official end being only days away, violence continued in pockets of desperation. High in the mountains of Austria stood Castle Itter, a 13th century fortress overlooking a quiet village. During the war, the Nazis had turned it into a special prison, not for ordinary captives, but for some of France's most important political prisoners. Inside the castle were former French prime ministers, generals, ministers, and resistance leaders. These men were valuable political hostages. The Nazis hoped they could be used as bargaining chips if the war turned against them. But by May 1945, the SS guards abandoned the castle. The Nazi regime was collapsing too fast to protect its prisoners. The French captives were suddenly alone and surrounded by danger. The SS had not vanished. Nearby Waffen-SS units, fanatically loyal to Nazi ideology, were still active. Unlike regular German soldiers, many SS units refused to surrender. They continued fighting, executing prisoners and civilians alike. The men inside Castle Itter knew one thing: if the SS returned, they would be killed. With no guards and no protection, the prisoners made a desperate decision. They sent messengers into the countryside searching for Allied forces. One messenger reached the American army. That message landed in the hands of Captain John C. Jack Lee, Jr., a tank commander in the 12th Armored Division. Lee was an aggressive, unconventional officer. He did not wait for perfect conditions or full approval. If civilians were in danger, he acted. Lee learned that high-profile prisoners were trapped in a castle and under threat from SS troops. The war was almost over, but for those men, time was running out. Lee made a decision that shocked everyone around him. He would attack the castle, with almost no backup. Lee gathered a small force, around 14 American soldiers, one Sherman tank named Besotten Jenny, and a few vehicles. But there was a problem. Castle Itter lay deep inside enemy territory. The roads were dangerous. SS units were everywhere. Then something even stranger happened. Lee encountered a German officer, Major Joseph Zepp Gangl of the Wehrmacht. Gangl was not an SS officer. He was a regular German army officer who had turned against the Nazis. As Germany collapsed, Gangl focused on protecting Austrian civilians from SS reprisals. Gangl knew about Castle Itter. He also knew that if the SS attacked it, the prisoners would be massacred. Gangl made an unthinkable proposal. He offered to fight with the Americans, not against them. Captain Lee accepted, and so history took a turn no one could have imagined. An American tank crew, U.S. infantry soldiers, and German Wehrmacht troops, former enemies, formed a single fighting force. Together they moved toward Castle Itter. When they arrived, they found the castle poorly defended and impossible to fully secure. Lee placed his Sherman tank at the main gate to block the entrance. The Americans and Germans prepared defensive positions inside the ancient stone walls. Inside the castle, the French prisoners watched in disbelief. Americans and Germans fighting together? Some of the prisoners even joined the defense, carrying weapons and helping reload ammunition. One former French tennis champion, Jean Bouratras, volunteered to escape the castle under fire to seek reinforcements. By the morning of May 5, 1945, the SS attacked. Hundreds of Waffen-SS soldiers surrounded the castle. They brought machine guns, mortars, and anti-tank weapons. The defenders were vastly outnumbered. The SS opened fire. Bullets slammed into stone walls. Explosions echoed through the mountains. The Sherman tank at the gate became a primary target. SS anti-tank weapons struck it repeatedly. Inside the castle, American and German soldiers fired side by side, sharing ammunition, covering each other, and holding positions. This was no symbolic alliance. This was real combat. The SS attempted to storm the gates. They tried to breach the walls. Each attack was pushed back at a great cost. Then disaster struck. The Sherman tank was disabled. Its gun was destroyed. The defenders were running low on ammunition, and relief had not yet arrived. Major Gangel exposed himself to enemy fire to protect civilians fleeing nearby buildings. A sniper's bullet struck him. Gangel was killed instantly. A German officer died defending prisoners alongside American soldiers. As the SS prepared for a final assault, it seemed the castle would fall. But then, just in time, help arrived. As the SS tightened their grip around Castle Itter, the defenders prepared for what they believed would be their last stand. Ammunition was almost gone. Casualties were mounting. Without their tank, their strongest defense had been lost. Inside the castle walls, fear was real, but so was resolve. American soldiers, German Wehrmacht troops, and French prisoners stood together, waiting for the inevitable. Then, in the distance, gunfire changed direction. Armored engines roared through the valley. American reinforcements had arrived. A unit of the U.S. 142nd Infantry Regiment broke through SS positions and charged toward the castle. Caught between two forces, the SS attackers were overwhelmed. Many were killed, others surrendered. The Battle of Castle Itter was over. It lasted less than 2 days, but it became one of the most extraordinary battles in military history. The French prisoners were freed. The SS threat was eliminated. The war in Europe officially ended just days later, on May 7, 1945. But Castle Itter left behind something far greater than a military victory. It left behind a lesson. This was the only known battle in World War II where American and German soldiers fought together as allies. Former enemies stood on the same side of history, not because of orders, flags, or politics, but because of conscience. Captain Jack Lee was later awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for his leadership. Major Josef Gangel was honored by Austria as a hero who resisted Nazism and protected civilians. Gangel's sacrifice became a symbol of moral courage. For decades, the story of Castle Itter was largely forgotten. It did not fit neatly into the traditional narratives of good versus evil. It challenged simple explanations of war. But history is rarely simple. Castle Itter reminds us that even in humanity's darkest moments, individuals can choose honor over ideology. Enemies can become brothers, not because the war demands it, but because humanity does. Today, the castle still stands, quiet, silent, overlooking the same valley where Americans and Germans once fought side by side. The stones remember, and history finally listens.